Hi folks, James here, and welcome to the Spyro Circle, this time brought to you by Forbes Israel. This week I sat with Lior Dolinski, co-founder and CPO at Agora. Agora is tackling a problem in the real estate sector. Now it has billions of dollars as an asset class, but it's actually famously quite traditional, with a lot of its processes still set manually in Microsoft Excel and isn't as tech-savvy as other sectors. So we spoke about why that may be, and then we spoke about how the founders who met in Israel's IDF 8200 unit brought some of their values and experience into that sector. We also then spoke about the values of the company today and where it sees the future of AI. I hope you enjoy. Lior, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we get into it, I want to start with some key points about the company. So, founded in 2019, headquarters in Tel Aviv and New York City, serve real estate investments globally, but particularly in the US, Europe, Australia, and Israel. And you've raised venture funding totaling almost $64 million, including a Series B of $34 million last year. And to top it all off, all three of the founders, were recently named Forbes 30 under 30.
Yep.
So how did I do?
You did well. You did well.
Okay, great. So I want to break that down a bit. And so for those who don't live and breathe real estate investing and maybe unfamiliar with you guys or the industry, what was so broken about the way that firms managed investors and capital for you guys to start something like Agora? And where did your personal story fit into that?
Yeah. So I think to answer that, I need to go way back for a second to how I got into real estate because, fun fact, I didn't have any connection to real estate prior to Agora. I grew up in Israel in the northern part in a very small town. My parents came from Soviet Union, like what you call a first generation immigrants here. And with the Soviet education, I read a lot of books, a lot of biographies, especially. And I knew from early on reading all that this is something that I would want to do. Like I just knew that I had to go to, like I had an entire plan to go to the Technion, study computer science, get into the tech world, and then start a company that does science, engineering, tech, computers, something like that. So that was my initial kind of get-go in life. Then, first time I stepped foot in Tel Aviv was around age 17 when I was testing for the military. And I ended up serving in 8200, where I met Noam and Bar.
So for those who may not be familiar with 8200, just give a brief overview as to what it is in the Army and specifically.
Yeah, so I think 8200 is kind of the equivalent of the American NSA. It's a cyber intelligence unit that does basically intelligence. It collects a lot of data, then analyzes this data and tries to provide an updated, intelligent overview of the entire Middle East, basically, to the Israeli commanders and government. So it plays really a pivotal role in the security of Israel. And it's a great place for an 18-year-old to learn a lot. And I think it's a great place to do mainly two things. One, it gave me a lot of the kind of professional starting point, really from the smallest things to how I manage my inbox and calendar to how to run multi-million-dollar projects that I'm responsible for, moving a lot of pieces and departments and complex products. So it kind of distilled a lot of fundamentals that I think you might get like later in life if you're not part of this kind of unit. So that's really a privilege to do that 18-year-old. And then the second thing is you meet a lot of great people. That's where I met Noam and Bar, my other two co-founders. And I think people underestimate how hard it is to actually come up with good co-founders. If you don't find them, or it's not your brother or someone you really know for a long, long time, it could be quite difficult. Like I have a lot of entrepreneurs starting out talking with me, and one of their biggest problems sometimes is finding a co-founder that you can trust. So these are the two gifts that I got from the military service, kind of the fundamentals of product and tech, and then meeting great, amazing people, friends for life, and among them Noam and Bar, my two co-founders. So that
And still friends,
and
which
still
is
very
nice.
good friends. Yes, still very very good friends. And I think after the military service, I went on as planned to study computer science at the Technion, and me and Bar we kept close touch. And Bar, that's the hook to real estate. That's the hook that I had to real estate. Bar grew up in a very real estate oriented family, both from the mother and father side. They're like big developers here in Israel. So he kind of grew up with real estate all around him. And that intersection between tech and real estate was pretty natural for us. Um,
How is it natural? Because I want to get into that in a sec, because maybe natural between the two of you, but they are not natural
yeah,
connections, right? So talk me through maybe how you guys got there.
yeah. So one weekend we kind of sat for coffee here in Tel Aviv. I was really big on blockchain at the time. It was like 5, 6 years ago, and was intrigued by the technology and what it can do. And we started kind of rambling ideas together, and we started to get fascinated about um a whole problem that the real estate sector has, which is liquidity. Um, and when we looked at the real estate sector as like an asset class, and it's important to understand the real estate sector is the biggest asset class in the world. And it's not only the biggest asset class, it's the most complex one and the most kind of old fashioned one. It's a business that is built really on handshakes, on communication, like relationship building. And the biggest technological advancement in the real estate space over the last 50 years was Excel. And we kind of we realized that, and we were fascinated about the realm of possibilities of what tech could do to real estate. So we started off by this intersection of blockchain and real estate by a totally different idea, talking about liquidity. Like, how can we provide liquidity to real estate asset owners? I'll give you an example. Let's say you have an office building and it costs a lot of money, but you need cash. You're the owner. It's pretty hard to sell this asset. So what we wanted to do is kind of allow you to do an IPO of the asset, maybe on the blockchain. Then you will be able to kind of get a little bit of liquidity out, and someone is going to buy this piece of asset from you, maybe a small investor that doesn't even have access to cool assets like this. So this was like the starting point of Agora. That was the initial idea that got us fascinated. I ditched my dorms in Haifa in the Technion and moved to Bar's couch here in Tel Aviv, and we started running on it. A lot of legal work.
Regulations
Oh, so much regulation.
for Israel or for everywhere?
That's the thing. Every jurisdiction, it's its own battle. You're not gonna solve it only once. So you need to solve it in Israel, then the EU, then the US, then like every market is completely different. And what we wanted to do is get to a proof of concept, just to make something small happen. And after a lot of legal work, we made it happen. And what ended up happening is we kind of built a small platform for us. And between you and I, it was pretty lousy. It was just for us to manage kind of the first deal there. And we made the proof of concept happen. I'm not going into all the specifics because we could lose time there. But um, what ended up happening is we came back to all those real estate investment firms that we were already talking with. And we kind of showed them, hey, look, guys, this is what we did. We can provide you liquidity, and there's this back office and the blockchain and everything. And this led to our first aha moment, because what we noticed in all those meetings, they really didn't care about the liquidity problem. That wasn't their top priority. But they really were kind of hooked by this lousy back office that we've built. And they asked us, what is this? And we didn't even like meant to show it. Like, it wasn't something we were like enthusiastic about. And they were, when I asked why, they pulled up this insane Excel spreadsheet with billions of dollars managed through it. And they said, well, this is how I manage my life. And I think this what led to the first aha moment of what Agora is today. We realize these guys are managing billions and billions of dollars in Excel spreadsheets.
You have examples of that as well, not just in sectors like real estate, but government ministries and parts of parliaments or Congress, and they're running on Microsoft Excel or Windows XP, really traditional, old, antiquated technologies. When it comes to what they saw in what Agora was offering, and then you had this aha moment where you could kind of make a business out of it. What was that like in terms of looking for and gaining customers who weren't necessarily tech savvy? Because as we've said, it's not a tech environment, which is strange because it's one of the biggest asset classes in the world, and yet there wasn't much innovation there. So what was that like in you getting those customers?
Yeah, I think it required a few things. First is, yeah, it did require market education because some of them did realize the pain they were suffering because like doing this amount of back office and manual work, uh, it's insane. So they knew they had a problem. They were just reluctant to solve it because they thought that was the only reality that could happen. So we had to educate them on look how what you do in like 3 weeks takes literally 5 minutes. We had to show them this value. And once we did, they had the aha moment. And I think one of the things that really played for our favor was the fact that we started in Tel Aviv, the fact that we didn't start in the US. For two reasons. One, we had great design partners here. Like it kind of surprised us even the size of the industry in Israel. Like how much real estate investments, like his money is raised here in Israel. It's pretty large compared to the size of the country.
What could you tell me about that?
So you have a lot of institutional bodies here in Israel that are collecting huge sums of money from investors and then investing this in real estate in the US. But the entire operation, employees, the firm itself is here in Israel. So we had access to a lot of great design partners from the get-go, which could really help us to kind of build the fundamentals of the software. And it also made us do it in a global lens. So if we were to start in the US, like some of our competitors, the incumbents in the market that were then did, it kind of limit us only to the US market. Like we had to do multi-currencies. We had to do like multiple languages. We had to think more globally. And this really serves us well today as we expand to Australia and Latin America and Canada and Europe and so on. So I think market education was a must. And then the fact that we started here in Israel kind of gave us the initial boost that we needed.
Wow. Okay. Sounds like a cool initial journey with the foundations, laying the concrete, if you'll pardon the pun,
Yeah.
to allow growth overseas. What can you tell me about the prop tech sector more generally? Because you've established this platform. It helps people, it helps investor relations, it helps compliance, it helps time flows, like you mentioned. Where do you fit into the prop tech sector, which is undergoing some of this digital transformation?
Yeah. So since real estate is such a huge asset class, the prop tech sector is also huge, and there's a lot of kind of sub verticals in that. So when you're talking about prop tech, it could be anything from helping people lease apartments, it could be managing properties. So like actually managing a property, like mowing the lawn and collecting rent and stuff like that. Or it could be managing multi-billion global funds, which is what we do, which is not on the property level. It's more on the investment level, right? So we're more engaged on the level of like money coming in from investors, money coming out as distributions and dividends, like managing the fund itself. So the prop tech sector is so huge, and we're like in one vertical of it. And again, the thing is, since it's as an asset class, it's so huge. Either way, as you slice and dice this prop tech sector, every niche is like trillions of dollars worth of real estate. So yeah.
And then with all of that real estate in all of those different regions, which we touched on, comes the regulations, the languages, the currencies.
Yeah.
What's that been like? Because I speak to other fintech companies that have similar barriers to entry in different markets. So what's that like in a property context? Is there regional regulations? Are there cultural barriers? Talk me through what that's like.
Yeah. So compliance, it's always like a boring subject that everyone needs
Perfect
to.
for our listeners and viewers. Okay.
Yeah, it's like you just have to get through it. And one of the biggest things that our clients need to face is compliance due to investors. Why? Because they're raising billions of dollars from investors, and they need to figure out who those guys are to begin with. So, like typical KYC, know your client, or like anti money laundering processes. Like I'm collecting a $10 million check from someone. I need to make sure this is not a terrorist from Hezbollah, right? Or someone on the watch list. So we help them do that. We help them kind of manage all the compliance side of the KYC AML part. And then there's the regulation with tax, which is another huge thing. Like I'll give you an example. So every year, tax season happens in the States. Everyone need to file their taxes. It's a big headache, right? And it's especially a big headache if you're managing like 100 properties with hundreds of entities and hundreds of investors that you need to file those taxes for. And what they used to do is kind of run around like headless chickens in those few months of tax season, trying to collect all their data. And it was a really stressful period for them because if they mess something up, they mess it up for their investors as well. One of the things that we realized early on is we have all the data that they need in one place. So what we did is we kind of automated all this process.
How
So
did you get that data? How did you,
so
what was that process?
this is inherent from the workflows of that our software provides because we're already sitting and I think maybe it's important to mention like what we're trying to build here is the operating system for these firms. One analogy could be Toast.
Mhm.
If you're familiar with them, it's a company that kind of builds the operating system for restaurants. So if I want to open up a pizza place in Manhattan, what I would do is I'd call up Toast, and they would give me like the point of sale solution, the marketing solution, the account ledger, the payrolls, the capital, everything in one place. And this is what we're trying to do in our sector as well. So the fact that we're already sitting on top of their existing workflows, we got them out of Excel. And all the data that used to be in Excel now sits in Agora. And we can utilize this data to do a lot of cool stuff, including remove a lot of headache like we did in the tax season. So instead of them chasing around accountants for a few months, a process that takes literally a couple of days, with Agora's accountant just signs it off and tax season becomes a breeze. And there's endless possibilities of what we can do with additional products and services like that.
What was the most challenging region that you folks grew into when you talk about these considerations? What was the hard, was it Europe, America, Australia? I mean, talk me through the challenges you faced at each one.
Yeah, so I think 90% of our market is the US.
Mm.
That's just the size of the market there and the economy.
Does that
Like,
speak for the real estate
yeah,
market? Okay.
yeah. Like if you take, I think just New York alone, like as a state, it probably is in as the size of the entire Europe market,
Wow.
like in terms of our potential clients. So our massive focus area is the US. Um, so I think the fact that we started with Israel and the regulation here could be tough as well. Already gave us a good start. So when we came to the US, we were already we're very into it. And I think Australia was kind of challenging as well because they do business a little differently there. A lot of debt. They're super tight on regulation. But again, we were already super strong because Israel gave us a good head start.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm sure Israel's a good pressure cooker, right, for these
Yeah,
types of things.
yeah,
Um, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what it takes for a company to start in Israel and grow out, which is what I imagine a lot of startup companies from Israel want to do. Um, Talk me through how you folks did that, because you're now approaching your 7th year. You founded in
Yeah.
2019. You hit that hurdle, and talk me through about what that was been like. What do you consider when you're growing or scaling, or as you said, the company changes, right? You start in one way and you
Mhm.
pivot to another thing. What should Israeli companies consider when they are doing something like that?
So I think first point for us was kind of breaking the barrier of the geography. What it means is we started in Israel, and especially as the first time founders, we were like 23-year-old kids. We looked at the US as like this huge, scary thing that, okay, we have our local arena here, which we feel comfortable with, but the US is like, it's a big pool, it's a big ocean. And I think two things really helped us kind of make the move. One, we participated in an accelerator. Today it's called Fusion by Guy Katsovich and Yair Vardi, amazing guys. Back then it was called Fusion LA because it was in LA. And we spent like 3 months in Santa Monica and got introduced to the US market in general. We met a lot of potential clients there, a lot of people. This kind of broke the sound barrier for us. And after we came back, after those few months, like the US wasn't a thing. It was, okay, it's just another market with people like us that we could sell to. Like, so there was this mental barrier that we had to get through. The other thing that really helped us, and it's funny to say, but the diaspora of Jewish or ex-Israeli people is huge in real estate. So we had a lot of like warm welcomes, especially in New York or Florida or Texas. And we kind of used this initial connection to get us through the door. And it got us through the door. What kept us in the room was the product and the value that we provided. But yeah, there are a lot of like Israeli slash Jewish communities that are doing a lot of real estate.
And I imagine plenty of 8200 alumni, IDF, of course, alumni. What did that experience that you had early on, or that all three of you had, what did that bring to your approach in Agora and growth and scale and leadership?
Yeah, so I think when we started a company, we didn't have like a typical standard for who we are hiring. Like we didn't have a checklist. And what happened is we started to hire people that kind of, were very smart, hardworking, no ego, and maybe fun to go out on a beer after work with. That was like the unofficial criteria. And those were similar to the people that we enjoyed working with in the unit. So we brought on those people. And naturally, when we arrived at like 20, 30 people at the company, naturally a culture is created. And
Which you have to maintain as you grow.
yeah,
It's established.
exactly. And this goes back to your latest question on how to scale globally. This is a huge challenge that not a lot of companies talk about, but how do you maintain this culture? So when we got to like 30 employees, we realized that accidentally we created a very good culture. Why? Because people used to come by to interview at our offices and they kind of pointed it out and they told me, I have a very cool vibe here in the office. Like I just came in and they offered me a glass of water and they were so friendly. They told me how like I'm not used to it. And since Agora was basically my first job, I assumed every high tech company has the same culture, and I realized not. And at this point, we said, okay, we created a very good culture. How do we not mess this up as we scale to hundreds of employees? And it was a challenge, especially when we kind of built the hub in New York, because here in Tel Aviv you have the Israeli mindset, the chutzpah, the mentality, and it's very hard to replicate the same, moving fast, scrappiness, like just say it as it is, no political correctness.
And New York would probably be the most
Yeah.
equal place, if
Yeah.
any,
Yeah.
to try and match that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it was a challenge. It was a challenge. So we had to do two things. One, a lot of presence there. You can't just open up a site in New York and hope that the culture will be same as in Tel Aviv. So we actually relocated a lot of like senior managers in the company there to kind of be our foot there, and then like like soldiers on the ground that kind of make sure the culture is right. And we really had to invest in how we build the values of the company. Now, every company has values, and the values always sound great. It's always great. It's never like bad values, right? But you can see like companies that have integrity on their wall, but then they end up with the fraud accusations. So
Right.
values don't always correlate to the actual actions.
Or fun, working evenings and weekends and
Yes.
holidays. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I think we spend a lot of time really cultivating our values. And there's a very good Netflix presentation that kind of came out a few years ago in Silicon Valley, that kind of breaks down how Netflix sees culture, and stuck with me to this day. And at the end of the day, it's super super simplistic. Values is who you hire, fire, and promote. That's it. If there's not any correlation between the two, values are just stickers on the wall. So we set our values, and we try to do our very best to actually live to that. And sometimes we don't hire someone, even if they're an A player, top performer, best in class, top sales guy, but we know he's not in alignment with our values. So maybe he's a good fit to another company, but not to the Agora value and culture that we're trying to create. So those are like the two things we try to do.
So tell me about that person then. So a person walks in, what number employee would they be? And what are the values that you're looking in them to match you guys?
Yeah. So I think what we did is we're at around 230 employees, I think, by now.
230 across both countries. What's the distribution on
Yeah.
where are they?
So product R&D management is mainly here in Tel Aviv. So it's like 130, 40 people here in Tel Aviv. Then we have like 50 people in the New York office. And then we have a few satellites as well. So we have an office in Australia. We have now a new hub in Austin, Texas that we're building. Florida, Canada, even Colombia and Latin America. There's a small hub. So there's small satellites that are coming about. And um, if an employee comes in now, I think what we would look for is someone that really has or is looking for. It's kind of it's gonna sound a little bit cheesy, but I love this reference from it's from Jeff Bezos, founder of
Who? Yeah, I'm kidding.
founder of Amazon, cool dude, and he always speaks about the day one mentality. Day one mentality basically means like when you're just starting out, as we did. You're small, you're scrappy, you're moving fast. Decisions are made super fast. There's no bureaucracy. What you have in mind is only the customer. You're not thinking about like internal challenges. You're thinking about the challenges the customer has. And everything just happens. And a lot of companies, what tends to happen is they move to like a day two mentality with time. It's a natural process because the company gets bigger. So a day two mentality is the exact opposite. Its decisions are slow, large teams. You don't start to think about the client when you get up in the morning. You start thinking about the internal stuff that you have to deal with. And day two mentality is where companies die, by the words of, of Bezos. So we're really, really trying to stay in that day one mentality. And there's certain types of people that fit into this mentality. We're looking for people that are still hungry, that are okay with being flexible and moving things around. And if tomorrow morning everything changes, they adjust. They're working hard. They're not political. They're looking at results. And they really have this day one mentality. And I think the greatest companies out there, they manage to do it with like tens of thousands of employees, like even Amazon, like I think millions of employees now. So who am I at Agora with like 200 employees not to be a day one mentality? So I think that's the first thing we're looking for.
That's great. I love that. I love that mentality. Um, in 5 years, I don't want to ask where the company is going to be in 5 years. But I want to know a bit more about the industry, and I want to know a bit more where prop tech is going to be or AI is going to
Mhm.
play in some of this. So how do you see it changing and developing over the next half decade? What do you think is going to come about?
Yeah, I think um, the prop tech industry will be one kind kind of piece of the puzzle in a larger AI super cycle that affects every industry, of course. And I think companies like Agora really need to rethink how the industry will look like, to your question, because things are moving so fast now. I'll give you an example. We're building a B2B SaaS business. So we're selling software. Now, what will happen with a lot of software businesses is they will need to rethink their moats. Because if yesterday just building a software was a moat by itself, because it was hard to get in the engineers and to kind of build a product, today building a product gets cheap with AI. So the cost of building is drastically reduced, and it's not a moat anymore. So what is a moat for companies like ours? It could be the data that we hold. It could be the brand. It could be our go-to-market, like how we approach growth. It could be a lot of different things, but I think one kind of premise that we're looking at is how does Agora evolve as a product in the next 5 years? Now, as we're looking at the industry, we see a few things happening. One is the industry is going from Excel only, like afraid of tech, to we want tech. We understand there's this mindset shift that is happening. They understand they need AI. The problem is they don't know what to do with it. So that's where we try to bridge the gap. Since we already have the operating system, we have the data, we have the AI engineers, we're trying to be their AI partner in going through this. This means that uh, taking in huge amounts of data is not something an analyst need to do like for days and days. It's something you could have in seconds. It means that the experience that you have could be super, super personalized. Like every real estate firm, since the industry is so complex, everyone needs their own tweaks and customizations. And same as you do with the vibe coding today, which you could just basically build your own app. So I think this will be another kind of shift in the industry. Everyone would want what's personalized for them. They don't want an off the shelf product that they need to customize themselves to. So we're looking at those trends and how we will serve our clients going forward in the next few years. And I think the last thing is going back to the service layer that we provide. So I talked about like the accountants, and they will be supercharged by this fact. There's an entire service industry of fund administrators and bookkeepers and accountants and lawyers that will be completely revolutionized by this. And I think a lot of productivity will be 10x using AI.
So it's not a bubble, AI.
I don't think so. There are some. It's a huge.
There's all the talk, right? Every
Yeah.
push notification is the bubble bursting or what's happening? No, it's
Yeah,
not.
it's
So
a huge debate. And I won't proclaim myself as someone that will 100% can determine if that's a bubble or not. In my opinion, it's not a bubble. Although there are some elements of a bubble, we're seeing it in certain valuations in the market. We're seeing it in certain frenzy, investment runs on specific AI verticals. But the value is there, and I think that what defines a bubble. Like if you look at a few years ago. If you remember Web3 and NFTs, that this was an entire thing. I think the problem there was the use cases. There was not a lot of use cases.
well, that was an entire thing for like a summer,
yeah,
and then it just went away because
yeah, and I think like the test for me when I looked at it was what's the use case, and it was hard for me to find the actual use case. Or when Zuckerberg used to talk about the metaverse, way ahead of its time. Was not a lot of use cases. But when you look at AI today, there's a million use cases. Like I use ChatGPT, Gemini all day long, like that, and it makes me so much more productive. It saves me 2-3 hours every day. I know the value is there. I'm looking at it. We're looking at it in the transformations the companies are doing. Like we're seeing Google is just more profitable because they're implementing AI. So it's a real thing. I don't think it's a bubble. I think it's part of a bigger super cycle that's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years, which will make the entire industry build itself all over again, from data centers and chips to software companies like Agora rebuilding the user experience. there's an entire larger super cycle here happening, and we're just, I think, at the beginning of it.
Yeah, there are like 100 different stories about how AI is the most exciting future. I used to laugh with people. I used to say when someone would say what tech interests you, I'd say anything except semiconductors, and because it's boring. And I would cheaply make a joke at the expense of something that I thought was quite boring. And then you look into it and the power that these data centers have, and the potential for the power they can have and host, and then all the countries fighting over the different. It's super exciting. There's a whole world out there that's about to undergo, as you say, quite a big super change.
Yep.
We are approaching towards the end of our time, but I do want to end our talk today how I often do, which is with a quickfire round, which is why I want to ask you a few questions and you answer them as quickly and as shortly. As quickly as tightly as possible.
Okay.
I want to just kind of dive a bit into your instincts a bit more. So, what habit or routine helps you stay creative under pressure?
Meditation.
What's one piece of tech you can't live without?
My Aura ring.
I want to learn about that in a bit. That's interesting. What's one feature of Agora that you think will surprise people the most?
Our CRM.
iOS, Android, or web? What's your
iOS all day, every day.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee, definitely coffee.
Double
espresso.
What's the best advice you ever received about building a startup?
Stay hands-on.
What's one book or podcast that helped shape your approach to product?
I'll give one podcast and one book as well. One podcast I really, really love. It's called Founders Podcast. And it's basically a guy that takes biographies of anywhere from Napoleon to Rockefeller and Elon Musk, and kind of makes 1 hour, 2 hour podcast summarizing them. I love this podcast. It's so great. And one book I'd recommend, there are the like kind of plain vanilla answers of like inspired by Marty Kagan or stuff like that. I think that the book I would recommend, which is more unusual, is Liftoff. I think Eric Berger made it. It's about the early days of SpaceX. He actually kind of recorded the 5-7 years of the early days of SpaceX and how they launched everything and the rockets, the failures, and how they rebuilt everything and iterated it. Amazing book. Amazing book.
Wow. Side note, I know I'm not the one being asked the questions here, but I just want to add on that the Walter Isaacson biography of Elon Musk is a fantastic deep dive into all of it, of course, but especially SpaceX and some of its early days, although it ended right as he was buying Twitter. So there's a whole sequel to be made.
Yeah.
Final question. Well, second last question. If you weren't in tech, what would you be doing?
Music.
What instrument?
Piano.
Nice. Yeah. Me too.
Soviet Union.
Of course. Final question. I said there was one more question. What's the best way for people looking, watching, listening to this at home to be following you guys, following you, get in touch with you? What are the best ways that people can keep following?
Think simply. We're on everywhere, like Instagram and LinkedIn, but on our website, we have everything you need to get in touch with us. Partnerships, careers, product, like anything you want.
And the new hire with the value system as well, if you're still looking. Lior, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. Been a pleasure.